JP and his wife are YouTubers. They travel around the world and they tell you the pros and cons about each country. Today I was listening to their pros and cons about Greece, and I don't know if there are a specialized tourism section in Greece or Italy or Spain. They sit down and listen to the top, let's say, 5 or 7 or 10 YouTubers that talks about their countries from a foreigner point of view, from a traveler, a visitor point of view. And they start maybe looking at the pros and cons, because this is a constructive criticism for any country to listen and to see how can they improve on people visiting their countries, especially when a third or more of their economies, most of these countries in Europe like Spain and Italy and Greece, depends on tourism. And how frustrating it is for tourists to face things like this after traveling for many hours, jet lag, spending money, especially if they have kids, to be in shock of what other people in those countries don't think it's anything out of the ordinary, because this is how they lived. I do understand that. I love Greece. I love the history of Greece, the food. But for example, if I compare Greece and I want to eat the same quality of food with lower cost and much better accommodation and infrastructure and hotels than Greece, Turkey is next door. And wondering why for the last 15 years Turkey's tourism had boomed. What about Azerbaijan and Uzbekistan? Now they're coming up to the front, and they're offering much better accommodations than many European countries. What about the Middle East, Dubai, Oman? How friendly and the people are, in the accommodation at such a high quality with the similar prices or less than Europe. So why are people traveling for 10, 20 hours from New York and from Europe to Dubai, to the desert? It's that high quality accommodation, the friendliness, the high class. And I'm not saying that does not exist in Europe, in Italy, in Spain, in Greece, but apparently there's still lots of work to be done, and I don't know when that's going to be done, because countries who depend most of their economies, third or more, on tourism, when they start losing tourism money and tourists stop coming, they start complaining. Why? Because you never listen to the tourists and their problems. And some of these problems they're facing in your countries could be avoidable, and it's easily fixable. Some of it might take a little time, but nobody cares. Look what happened in the desert of Dubai. What they did in the last 20 years was remarkable, building something out of nothing. All right, and they attract so many business from around the world, and it's becoming one of the richest countries in the world, just because the way the leadership and the way they set up things and the infrastructure and the way they have trained their people and their services and their government officials to work with people and to treat people. All that works together in coherence as to dovetail the whole experience. People are not just going to eat a souvlaki in Greece. They can eat that maybe in Turkey. Maybe it's not going to be as good quality, but they can eat many other foods are the same or better quality than Greece and lower cost, including getting a much higher star rating hotel for same or lower cost than Greece. So I hope you look at the criticism with constructiveness that you can fix, instead of looking at it's against you or against your culture. It is not. So this is here JP doing his pros and cons about Greece, and I'm going to just record the cons now.
As Americans, we say shocked to be good or bad. We say, yeah. I love the history of Athens, the Parthenon and the Acropolis and the ancient Agora, and the history there is just incredible. I just love that part of it, and the city I thought was pretty, and walking around and seeing all of those ancient structures. But the culture shock was too much for me. I didn't feel welcome there. I couldn't like get into the groove of how they do things. A lot of things just didn't make sense to me. I would do everything wrong, and then they would yell at me for doing things the wrong way, like at the grocery store or on the tram. I mean, I just couldn't do anything right in that country for some reason.
I didn't think it was nearly as bad in Corfu, but
It wasn't, no.
yeah, they were a bit more relaxed there. But they definitely have a bit more of an abrasive personality, or their culture is a bit more abrasive. And if you're not used to that, it can be a bit of an adjustment, and it certainly was for one of us.
Yes, it was. I read an article about this couple from the U.S. that moved to Crete, and in their article they talked about public venting and how the Greeks like to get all of their frustrations out in the street in public by yelling at each other. We experienced that more than
We
once
did, yeah.
of the Greeks yelling at each other in the street.
It's an interesting cultural difference for sure.
From Athens, we
So if you go, for example, to Cyprus, or let's say right next door, which is almost similar culture, similar food, they're much more friendlier and less abrasive than Greek. And I can't say all the Greeks are like that. But also, if you go and fly an hour to Lebanon, you're gonna eat, in my opinion, most delicious food on the planet, even more delicious than Greece and Cyprus, at lower cost, with I think one of the most amazing people on the planet. The most the whole world knows how educated and sophisticated Lebanese are, and that's depending on data from around the world, who travel the world, who live abroad in Brazil and America, and how successful they are. So is the Greek and the Italians and all that stuff. But I don't know, the culture shock to JP, I can assure you, you don't find that. Rarely you find that in Lebanon or even in Cyprus, to say the least. So my fellow Greek, please take this with a love chanting, and I still love Greece, and one day maybe I'll go visit Greece and see you, and not experience what JP is saying about Greece. Adios.